Greetings, I'm Solidus-Skully, and welcome back to Resident Evil 0. And it seems here we're going to go up to the second floor, face off against a few new enemies, like the Infestants from Devil May Cry 2. I do wonder if they happen to share some enemy concepts, because both games did come out in relatively the same time span, so yeah, it's curious. In this case though, the centipede enemies are pretty much just, well, skittery little bugs, so But yeah, on the second floor we're pretty much going to be unlocking some doors, finding some keys, and I believe in this very pod actually, due in for a boss fight where we'll get the fire key, unlock more doors, and finally start making some progress. Now, as you can tell by my hesitance and the fact that I'm kind of stuttering in places, yeah, I do suppose I can feel comfortable in admitting a bit of trepidation about commentating over some parts of Resident Evil 0 in the sense that, again, not that you're really going to notice this, but I did take a 2-week-long break in between recording parts, the first of which was because I had plenty of things going on in my personal life. The other reason of which is actually concentrating on the Silent Hill Homecoming review, which is taking a lot more out of me than I thought. I mean, Jesus Christ. But yeah, part of the reason why I did feel some degree of trepidation in talking over Resident Evil 0 was that and again, this is really only down to the fact that I've, done Resident Evil commentaries for years at this point, is that I kind of feel like everything that I could say about it, I already have said, and, both the previous parts and previous commentaries that I've done, so coming up with something new, humorous, or insightful to say is, well, severely lacking. I mean, I do have my handy-dandy tangents to help me out, but at the same time, I also don't really want to exhaust them so soon, but I don't know, that's just how the cookie crumbles, really. Because, I mean, in typical Resident Evil fashion, you're not really coming across any new enemies specifically. Well, I mean, I say that, we do come across bloody centipede enemies, but apart from just being little skitterbugs, they don't really tend to do anything interesting, which I suppose it's apropos that I did bring up Devil May Cry 2, because in that game, they can actually infest technology, which is slightly interesting. Incidentally, there is also like a very leechy boss fight in that game as well, with the Nephesturus, which is the Tower of Sin. I don't know, I guess both games really wanted to show off the CG cutscene budget in terms of how their leech technology handles, but it's neither here nor there in this case. But yeah, the room we're about to enter into now, this is pretty much going to be quite important. Primarily because this is how we're going to be accessing the fire key, but again, you can't access it now because we need Billy's help. And I was reading up, actually, it was actually a problem that a lot of players actually had, because again, I think this is mainly more of a first-timer's trap more than anything else, but again, basically, you need Billy to hoist up the winch to keep the cage in place. Then, when they go down to get the key as Rebecca, they would call Billy over, and if Rebecca was standing in the place where the cage would drop down, she'd die. Again, a bit of a beginner's trap, and one could say borders on Kaizo, but yeah, it's a bit of a whoopsie-daisy. Although, then again, I suppose you would also get the idea to not call Billy over towards you, since, again, he does stay stationary and hold it in place. And I suppose, given the earlier segment where, you use Billy to raise Rebecca up on the lift, would probably give you the idea not to call him over. Yeah, but that's neither here nor there in this case. Anyway, the little infestants, which is just what I'm calling them because I don't know what these enemies are called, yeah, they'll jump on Rebecca, try and drain her health a little bit, and basically they behave exactly like the infestants in Devil May Cry 2. So, yeah, there's that, I suppose. The blast with a shotgun will pretty much deal with them easily, and this room does also bear fruit, because it's here where we get the Grenadier Launcher. And again, as is typical Resident Evil tradition, we also have several different ammunition types. Now, we have some, regular grenade rounds, which are what they say on the tin. We also have flame rounds, which we'll be getting much later, and quite useful against the leech zombies. And then, of course, we also have acid rounds as well. Yeah, but we won't be seeing those until a little bit later. Acid rounds are also quite effective against the leeches, so, yeah, special grenade rounds are quite useful, but unfortunately, and I believe the grenade launcher also takes, well, 2 item slots. And again, I don't want to go on a bitch fest for Resident Evil 0, because I want to stress, I do like this game. And again, I know that sounded very hesitant. I mean, the game has a lot of flaws that irritate me, but again, I do think the core experience is still just as refined Resident Evil as you know and love it. It's just that I feel like there are a lot of small fixes you could have done. Like, I mean, again, if you wanted the more realistic item box, you know, the more realistic gameplay sort of thing of no item boxes, well, again, you could have done like a Parasite Eve thing where the boxes aren't connected and you gotta go back to specific boxes to get the items you lost. Or, I don't know, maybe trying to mitigate Rebecca's damage issue by giving characters a Kevlar jacket, or, you know, maybe some of the side packs that Claire and Leon got in Resident Evil 2. I don't know, just like small little things like that I feel would have helped, and again, I'm not going to say that previous Resident Evil games were customized to the, you know, to your own specific playstyle, but it would have made it a little bit less rigid than what the game offers as is, where it's, again, expecting you to have Billy do all the fighting while Rebecca solves very tertiary puzzles, which, I don't know, I kind of feel like it makes both characters feel a little bit worthless in that aspect, because, again, if you're having Billy do all the fighting, you're, again, borrowing from the future to try and waste resources and tank hits, which is very no bueno when it comes to having more skillful plays, particularly in the train segment where, again, you pretty much have no choice but to tank hits in very tight corridors. And again, when it comes to solving puzzles as Rebecca, it's pretty much just Billy does a thing here, Rebecca goes there to get a thing, and quite frankly, it's not very intuitive puzzle design because it's, well, too simple. I mean, again, I say too simple when, you know, we had the whole math addition puzzle earlier in the game, but I'm talking in terms of, you know, stuff that involves using both the character's skills to the nth degree, and granted, they will get some use with their specific abilities, like Rebecca mixing chemicals and, you know, Billy using his lighter, but I don't know, the differences just aren't really enough in my eyes. But what they could have done with the formula is, well, anybody's guess, I suppose. But anyway, that's a tangent I'll save for next time. We're not actually going to be having much of a boss fight because, spoiler alert, we have the mommy of the infestants, by which I mean it's just another giant bug. Whoopee. But yeah, part of the reason why I'm also talking about the boss fight is because since we are playing on pussy mode, and I'm so lame and stupid and gonna die, yeah, it's pretty much just a runaround of shoot the thing with a stipulation. A bit of a dangerous stipulation. I don't actually know what happens if you fail it, but there we go. I guess you'll see in a little bit. Because now we just need things to happen. And again, this is really what I'm talking about in terms of, you know, the puzzle design. Again, there's something that Billy has to do. He does it. And then Rebecca goes in to get a thing, or she has to separate herself from Billy to go to a separate area that he can't access, until they eventually unlock doors and meet up together. I don't know, it just kind of makes me wonder whether or not this game was initially intended with co-op play in mind.
Rebecca!
And speaking of co-op play, yeah, that's pretty much the same voice clip you'll hear over the radio. I don't know what happens if you lose this. I'm guessing if you take too long, Rebecca dies, but I really don't know. Even on normal mode, I never really lost to this on previous playthroughs, so it's really just sort of a bit... Yeah, that's pretty much all that she wrote for the boss fight.
Rebecca! Are you alright?
Yes, thank you.
Well, that certainly was an interesting boss fight. But yeah, to kind of comment on a little bit more on that, I'm guessing that it probably will eventually kill Rebecca if you don't hurry up, as is the case with a lot of other monsters and segments in the game, but... yeah, it's, just kind of is what it is. Anyway, now that we have the fire key, we can access the kitchen, which will get us some lighter fluid, to give more power to Billy's lighter and just unlock more doors, really. That's kind of the tertiary boring aspect of this, but then again, I do understand why it's there, because again, you're getting your lay of the land, slowly feeling your way across the environment. And again, it's all very typical Resident Evil stuff. The problem is just that, again, if you've been sticking with this channel for as long as you have, and honestly, quite a few people have, because in terms of what I'm seeing for the first 3 parts that I've uploaded, as of right now, it's actually doing fairly well by my relatively low viewership standards, so... again, obviously, people have come back for these Resident Evil commentaries. It's, just a matter of trying to keep it fresh and interesting enough so that things don't become stale and boring. So I suppose in the meantime, while we start opening some new doors, I might as well talk about some trivia. And, I really don't know what I could say without, well, I mean, I suppose this is relatively innocent enough. But yeah, I guess the concept of Crimson Heads, which was something introduced in Code Veronica, heavily expanded upon in the 2002 remake. But yeah, Crimson Heads are pretty much a no-show in this game. I think a bit of which was primarily out of the fact that they didn't want to tread toes on the 2002 remake's gimmick. And in turn, because the developer explanation was that Rebecca and Billy don't spend long enough in a single spot to get them to appear. And to kind of go into what Crimson Heads also do in the 2002 remake, really, it's pretty much playing like the whole zombie apocalypse thing by Romero rules, in the sense that, again, if you don't burn the bodies, then, again, zombies rise back up, they're a lot faster, their eyes glow red, and they deal a shitload more damage, which in Rebecca's fragile state would be, how you say, crap. But regardless of such, yeah, no Crimson Heads. But don't worry, we do have plenty of other equally annoying enemies, and oh boy are they to come. Some of them are monkeys, another of which is a little bit Betty. And yeah, I do have a bit of trivia regarding those enemies, and incidentally it also involves Devil May Cry. Both the first and second games, fittingly enough, because of concept art. Which I suppose is also something to get into, because Resident Evil 0, again, I think apart from its initial concepts, also tends to derive a lot of its influence from the discarded concepts of Resident Evil 4, actually. Specifically the castle build, which was after the first build of the game, which was Resident Evil 4 stylish. With that game, of course, eventually becoming Devil May Cry, and I believe it does share a lot of its monster influences, because looking at some of the concept art of DMC1, yeah, it does kind of highlight a few things. I mean, it kind of, and again, I don't bring this up idly either, because I do plan on commentating over Devil May Cry 1 around the October season, so yeah, look out for that. I've pretty much got the game recorded, as well as an extras video where I do show off the concept art of when it was Resident Evil 4, and yeah, I saw a few enemies that tend to resemble some Resident Evil 0 stuff, primarily, and the one thing that did actually surprise me a fair bit was actually a cut leech concept from Devil May Cry, which, again, I don't know whether it was inspired by Resident Evil 0 or intended to be a follow-through, like, you know, Resident Evil 0 and N64 was going to be a thing, then Resident Evil 4 would follow up on that, based on James Marcus's experiments, but I don't know, it would have been interesting, and we'll delve into that a little bit later, because that version of Resident Evil 4 was also gonna, you know, deal with Oswald Spencer, while I guess Sub-Zero dealt with James Marcus, as Code Veronica dealt with Edward Ashford, so yeah, we would have all gotten equal love for the founders of Umbrella Inc. I have no idea why I pronounce it like that. It's just because of Alfred's voice actor. I wish I could do that laugh, but I can't. His voice actor is just crazy. But anyway, oh no, zombies have suddenly shown up. Whoopee. But anyway, that's the manky kitchen that we wanted to get into, and now we can. The only key we really have left to get is now the water key, which gets us access to the other part of the building that you saw right upstairs, right next to where we fought that boss fight. By the way, this honest to God reminds me of well, it reminds me of certain kitchens I used to work in when I was a wee lad, first getting my feet wet in the work experience. It was a very danky-ass looking kitchen. Dear God, that brings back painful memories. Anyway, the important thing is we have lighter fluid so we can burn down this place and claim on the insurance. At least that's what I'm sure James Marcus would do. Actually, no, that'll probably be more Oswald Spencer, because he's the money-making guy. Yeah, but anyway, now that we have lighter fluid for Billy, yeah, this really isn't too much more apart from just unlocking doors, so trivia time once again to save my bacon from zombies. Yeah, well, I suppose I do have one other bit of non-essential trivia that doesn't go into spoiler territory, but yeah, one of the initial concepts, I believe this was initially for the N64 version, was the idea that either Rebecca or Billy could die by the end of the game that wound up being cut, and you might think that would have been a cut for a very obvious reason, namely that Rebecca needed to survive for Chris's scenario, but I don't know, like, I mean, I guess since this was also around about the time before Code Veronica released, and, you know, they eventually went with the whole idea that the Chris scenario of that game was the canon one, I don't know, I guess maybe they were also toying with the idea that the Jill scenario was the correct one, so it was only Chris, Jill, Rebecca, Chris, Jill, and Barry that survived, and everybody else perished? I don't know, it's quite curious. I mean, again, the idea that Billy could die is something that does make a little bit more sense than it should, since even after the fact that he survives in this game, spoiler alert, yeah, he never comes back in any other Resident Evil game for rather obvious reasons that the military tribunal would want his hide. So, yeah, I really don't know what would have happened in that aspect. I guess maybe they probably would have had relationship values kind of similar to what would happen in Resident Evil 1, because in Resident Evil 1 itself, it is actually possible to have both Barry and Rebecca die for the Chris and Jill scenario retrospectively. For the Rebecca scenario, I believe it's if you choose to leave her in the mansion and don't come back in time to save her from the hunters. Barry, I'm also trying to remember what it was. I think the Tyrant kills him towards the end of the game, but I think that's, I think the variant for that is if you don't wait for him, when he leads Jill down the snake hole, and then, you just run on regardless. At least I think, anyway. I can't quite remember what other stipulations there were. I do know the remake does change those stipulations because of, Lisa Trevor bullshit, but I'm just trying to remember what the original did. Because, I mean, again, Resident Evil 1, and I'm talking about the PS1 version, it did have a fair amount of dynamic things that could happen during the gameplay based on your actions, like, the points of the game in which Barry could save your hide, or, the different points in which Rebecca could heal you, or get the serum towards, what's-his-face, Richard, I think? Yeah. Again, Resident Evil 1 doesn't really get a lot of credit, and I'm talking about the original specifically, because it is a very nifty game, and again, I don't want to say that the remake kind of usurps a lot of the credit because it contains a lot of the things the original had, with a little bit of extra tedium thrown in there, but I don't know, it's kind of a shame that the original doesn't really get as much love as I feel it deserves, because, I mean, again, in spite of, some aging and archaicness here and there, it's still a remarkably solid game structurally. Yeah, but anyway, I said my piece. Now we can enter into this building, and I suppose I might as well actually get back on topic for the game for a change, and to sort of talk about, well, two of our main antagonists. I'm not just talking about Leechman and the seemingly deceased James Marcus walking about, but also with Albert Wesker and William Birkin. In the flesh, so to speak. And again, as some documents you're going to be finding over here will allude to, yes, it seems that they were trained at this very facility. I'm trying to... Scholar Will and Practical L, I believe their names are, at least for one of the upcoming documents you're about to read. So yeah, it's kind of weird that they seem to bring up their relationship with Umbrella, because again, the implication of the original game seemed to be that Wesker was more of a corporate mercenary akin to, what Nikolai was in Resident Evil 3, but no, the dude does have legitimate scientific knowledge, which I guess was meant to go forward into the future, given his role in Code Veronica and 5. But I don't know, I think Zero was at least a decent enough game to sort of give that introduction, because, yeah, Wesker's shift from, corporate mercenary to fucking Neo-esque supervillain in Resident Evil 5 was a bit of a difficult pill to swallow, but, Zero does at least somewhat give a basis in, his characterization, but yeah, that's neither here nor there in this case. They don't really focus on Birkin or Wesker's, stuff that much. I guess mainly because a lot of their roles are just sort of kept within their retrospective games, but I don't know. I mean, I guess they had to be there, it's just that you don't get as much development on the past as you would like. It's mainly just, they were promising students and upcoming scientists, and eventually Oswald Spencer was like, you know what, you're good lads, let's take you away from the scary James Marcus and have you under my tentative wing as he works on his zombie projects. Boo-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. Complete global saturation. Oh god, it's the Terminator deer again. Oh, wait a minute, it's not on its eye anymore. Damn it, joke ruined. But yeah, that's pretty much all we have this room for. We've still got a minute or two left, but you know what, fuck it, I think I might as well start the sign off now, because, yeah, we've still got plenty of rooms to explore, and hopefully in the next part things will start to pick up a little bit. I mean, Resident Evil 0 does kind of ebb and flow in terms of excitement and, well, you know, its typical Resident Evil gameplay structure, but again, it does get interesting. So on that note, I am Solidus-Skully, keep it new metal, and next time on the Resident Evil Zero commentary, we find out what is through this door. Catch you next time.
For the final night you came here for. The one derivative humanity is the one I abhor. I need a minute to eliminate forever what the everyday bullshit that I did you have done. You're impossible.